Hello and welcome back to Big Mouth. I was obsessed with Smallville. It was on for over a decade and it was such an important part of my life. Let's just put this down gently. All I'd ever talk about would be Smallville. I'd be on Facebook. I'd be talking about Smallville. I'd be on Twitter. I'd be talking about Smallville. I'd be posting these things called Smallville memories. Do you remember when Facebook used to have the Facebook notes? Well, I used to do this article every single morning called Smallville, the saviour of Superman. I was obsessed. I used to call Smallville the Bible of Superman. You know, I love Superman. He's my favourite character. When I first heard about Smallville, I was thinking, oh, for crying out loud, I don't want another Superboy TV series. I want an epic Superman movie. What is their problem? One day, I'm laying in bed, Sunday morning, well, probably late morning. I'm flicking through the channels. I was in the UK at the time. I'm on channel 4. I see this bald guy walking around. And at the bottom, it said Smallville. Oh my God. Is that Lex Luthor? Please make that be Lex Luthor. It was, of course, Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor. And from that moment on, I never looked back. I became more obsessed and obsessed and obsessed. A lot of people felt disappointed with Smallville because Clark never wore the costume to the very final episode. I never had an issue with that. I didn't want him to wear the costume and the cape until the final episode. That was the whole concept of the show. Him in his red jacket and blue t-shirt, amazing. Tom looked amazing. But Smallville was more than a pre-Superman story, as wonderful as all that was. Smallville told its own story, if you like, and it was amazing. The character dynamics, amazing. Clark and Lex, Lex and Lionel, Clark and Lionel, Martha and Lionel. I think that Lionel and Lex were the best things about the show. Of course, I loved Clark. He's going to become Superman one day. And how they dealt with all that was brilliant. I think during the time that Alfred Gough and Miles Miller were there, the show was in fantastic hands. It was so special and it meant a lot. We started off with season 1 with the Meteor Freaks. I thought it was great to make Kryptonite a big part of the show. To make it a character, if you like. It really worked for me. Now, a lot of people got really annoyed about that by the end of season 1, but I was fine with it. Then season 2, we were introduced to the Kawatche Caves. It was a bit too early to introduce the Fortress of Solitude, so the Kawatche Caves was the next best thing. And I thought that was a genius move by Alan Miles. I thought that was really brilliant. Season 3 was the darkest season. Fantastic season. I'll never forget the episode Shattered and then Asylum after that. That's when I really understood what a fantastic actor Michael Rosenbaum is. There'll never be a better Lex than Michael Rosenbaum. Never. The guy was fantastic. If you ever listen to his commentaries, his DVD commentaries, the guy's a riot. He's hilarious. Nothing like Lex. I follow him on Twitter. He's brilliant, absolutely. I mean, he was so important for those first 7 seasons. I love the show. There's so many memories, so many great memories. But then the CW took over the WB, and the trust and the great relationship that Alan Miles had with the WB was sunk as soon as CBS bought into this network and partnered with Warner Brothers. Things changed. They wanted to turn the CW, the old WB, into a channel for young females. So Smallville slowly became more about romance and this beautiful pre-Superman story. Of course, Lois Lane was introduced from season 4. They really wanted Lois and Clark to have this relationship, and indeed they did. Obviously, once Alan Miles left, the monkeys took over the zoo. It was a different situation. This is why Alison Mack was able to dictate in the finale how Chloe's story finished, by her walking off with a smug smile while the planet Apocalypse right above her was heading towards Earth. I don't know what she had to smile about. And of course, Tom Welling never ever wanted to wear the costume. He was worried about his career love Tom as much as I do. In the end, the key element to Tom not wearing the costume and for it to be CGI was his contract for the final 2 seasons, if I remember rightly. That's when he got a producer credit. Do you remember Hellcats? Who can not forget? I can't rub Hellcats from my memory, but that contract was the key moment when Tom Welling got to decide what happened to Clark in the finale and how his story finished. And it was a big disappointment for me, a big disappointment. You know, I was so obsessed with Smallville, but really, from the moment that I remember the day when I heard on the internet Oliver and Chloe were going to have a relationship. When I heard that, I was disgusted, I was heartbroken, and I knew this show was dead. But I couldn't stop watching it. I started this journey. I needed to see how this all was going to end. A bit like what Lionel said in season 10. It wasn't all bad. Southern and Peterson were great writers. They just couldn't run a show. They couldn't run a show because it was easy for the CW to dictate to them. It wasn't as easy for the CW to dictate to Alan Miles, and that was the problem. In an ideal world, Alan Miles would have stayed for an 8th and final season. They wanted to finish it off in season 7, but they couldn't because of the writer's strike. But if everyone came back, Rosenbaum, Christine Krug, John Glover, everyone came back for that final season, then Smallville would have ended how it should have done. Smallville will never be forgotten. When I think about the Arrowverse shows, which I don't have much time for anymore, I don't think they're very good, they can't touch Smallville. Smallville was more than someone with powers running about, although that element was fantastic. And that's another element I loved about Smallville. Even though it was young Clark Kent, he was Superman. He had the spirit of Superman. He had superpowers, and he was being a hero, and he was saving people's lives. It was everything you would want from a Superman TV show. No, he wasn't Superman, but only in name, because basically he was doing what Superman's always done. We had some great DC villains, some great DC characters. I think Absolute Justice was one of the finest moments in television history. Even though it was after Alan Miles left, and I've criticised that era, I think Absolute Justice was brilliant, beautifully written by Jeff Johns, and proof that he's going to write some great material for the DCEU. He can write. That was a great event. I'm very excited when I saw it, because it was like at the time Smallville just I couldn't see an ending for it. Obviously, ultimately, it did end with season 10. I don't think that was a CW. I think that was just Warner Brothers. They wanted to do a Superman movie. Man of Steel was in development. So Smallville had to go. It was very sad, because that show was my whole life. As sad and as pathetic as that sounds, Smallville was very special to me. It had special characters. It was amazing. You had Schneider as Jonathan Kent. What a beautiful performance. We, of course, had Annette O'Toole, who already played Lana Lang in Superman 3. It was beautiful memories, beautiful moments, things you can't forget. When you go back and watch the premiere, the pilot, and you see how young they were and how they grew into their roles and how brilliant it was. It's really sad to hear what's happened to Alison Mack now. Really sad. I'll back her, because she gave me a character I'll never forget. And we don't know the details of that case, of course, so I'm not going to sit in judgment over her. I hope the truth comes out, and I hope she's not guilty of the things she's being accused of. That's just me being a biased fan. Smallville was incredibly special. It was emotional watching Smallville. The longer it went on for, the more obsessed with it I became. I used to make trailers. I couldn't stop talking about it. All I wished was that I could know people in my real life, that I could talk about Smallville 24/7. Because my friends at the time weren't interested. But it was an amazing time. I just don't get that buzz of anything else these days. Smallville was a very special era for television. And it's an era I'll never forget.